I still remember the sound of that envelope sliding through my mail slot. A soft thud that would change my life forever. It was a spring morning in Willow Creek. The kind of morning that smelled like rain and lilacs, where the world looked innocent again. But when I saw the handwriting on that envelope, familiar, strong, slightly slanted, my heart stopped. It was from him. From Henry Whitman. My ex-husband. The man who once swore we'd grow old together. The man who walked out of our marriage with more silence than words. I stood there in my small kitchen, my hands trembling, the kettle whistling behind me like it was screaming for me to move. But I didn't. I just stared at my name written by his hand after 17 years. Inside was an invitation. Henry Whitman and Charlotte Reed, together at last. My chest went hollow. Together at last? I whispered those words like they were poison. I read the date, the location, and the golden letters that said, "We'd be honored to have you celebrate this new beginning with us." My tea went cold. My world colder. I sat down on the old wooden chair near the window and let the memories rush back. The way Henry used to kiss my forehead before work. The way he used to laugh when our daughter, Lila, danced barefoot in the living room. We were a family once. Until one day, he simply stopped coming home. He said he needed space, but space turned into silence, and silence turned into divorce papers delivered with no explanation. I remember signing them with shaking hands, wondering if love really dies, or if it just hides in the shadows of broken promises. If you've ever been left without an answer, without a reason, you'll understand what that silence does to a heart. For years, I moved on the best I could. I raised Lila alone, worked double shifts at the diner, smiled when people said I was strong, even when I wanted to collapse. But life has a strange way of circling back. When I held that invitation, I felt something deep inside me stir. Not anger, not pain, something quieter. A question that had been haunting me for 17 years. Why? And maybe this was my chance to find out. The days leading up to the wedding felt like slow motion. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw the lines of a woman who had loved too deeply and paid the price. My daughter Lila was grown now, living in Chicago, married, with a baby boy of her own. When I called to tell her about the invitation, she gasped. "Mom, you're not actually going, are you?" I paused, tracing my finger along the rim of my teacup. "I think I have to, sweetheart. Not for him, but for me. After what he did. He doesn't deserve your presence." "Maybe not," I said softly. "But I deserve my peace." The day of the wedding came too soon. The sun was shining like it was mocking me, the kind of warm glow you only see in movies. I wore a soft blue dress, one I'd kept tucked away for years. I didn't want to outshine anyone. I just wanted to be remembered. The ceremony was in a rose garden behind a country inn. Rows of white chairs, satin ribbons, and laughter everywhere. I felt like a ghost walking among the living. And then, I saw him. Henry. He was standing by the altar, older but still handsome, his silver hair catching the light, his smile practiced. When his eyes met mine across the crowd, his face went pale. For a brief moment, I saw something flicker there, guilt, or maybe memory. But then he looked away, pretending to fix his tie. His bride, Charlotte, looked radiant, younger than me by at least 15 years. Her laughter rang like bells. And yet, something about her eyes, they didn't sparkle. They were watching everyone too closely, like a woman guarding her secrets. As the vows began, I couldn't hear the words. My heart was pounding too loud. My mind was a blur of old nights and broken promises. But when the officiant said, "If anyone has any reason these two should not be joined," I didn't move. I wasn't there to ruin anything. Not yet. After the ceremony, the reception buzzed with music and chatter. People smiled, toasted, danced. I sat quietly at a corner table, watching Henry laugh with guests, the same laugh he once shared with me. A waiter offered champagne, and I accepted, though my hands trembled so much the bubbles nearly spilled over. And then, as if fate wasn't done playing its cruel game, a woman tapped my shoulder. "Excuse me," she said politely. "You're Mrs. Whitman, right?" I froze. "I used to be." She smiled awkwardly. "Oh, you must be the Evelyn, Henry's first wife. I've heard so much about you." I smiled faintly. "Is that so?" "Yes." Charlotte mentioned how kind you were to invite him back when things got messy. I blinked. Invite him back? She nodded quickly, realizing she might have said too much. Oh, I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't. But I caught her arm gently. No, please. Tell me what you mean. Her voice lowered. Well, Charlotte said you and Henry weren't really divorced when they met. That he said you gave your blessing. That you wanted him to be happy. I felt the world tilt. My throat burned. My blessing? I excused myself and walked out toward the rose garden, where the air smelled too sweet to be real. The truth was trying to find me, and I wasn't ready. I looked up and saw Henry near the edge of the garden, speaking quietly with a man I didn't recognize. Their words were low, tense, but I caught a few: papers, documents, settlement. And just like that, I understood. He hadn't invited me to heal old wounds. He invited me because he needed me to sign something. Something that would make his new life easier. I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to breathe. The betrayal came back in waves, 17 years old, but sharper than ever. I walked back into that reception hall, my heart pounding, my eyes burning. Henry turned just as I entered. For a second, our eyes locked, and I saw panic. He knew I knew. Stay with me till the end, I whispered to myself. What I found next still keeps me awake at night. He approached me, putting on that same charming smile. Evelyn, you came. I didn't think you would. I almost didn't, I said quietly. But curiosity's a strange thing, Henry. He cleared his throat. Can we talk outside? I followed him back into the garden where the roses hid the ugliness of truth. He looked around nervously. Listen, I appreciate you being here. It means a lot. There's just a small legal matter I hoped we could settle. The house title still has your name and... I cut him off. And that's why you invited me? He looked away. It's complicated. I laughed softly, not the way I used to. No, Henry. It's simple. You used to need me for love. Now you need me for paperwork. He tried to speak, but I raised my hand. You know, I spent years wondering what I did wrong. Why you left. Why silence became easier than truth. And now I see, you never wanted love, Henry. You wanted control. He sighed. Evelyn, please. I didn't mean. But I stopped him again. No. You meant every bit of it. You just didn't think I'd ever find out. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded paper. His face changed instantly when he saw it. What's that? The truth, I said softly. It was a copy of the deed. But not the one he remembered. Over the years, I had quietly changed it, with help from an old friend at the county office. The property had been under my name alone for over a decade. I handed him the paper. You can try to erase me, Henry. But you can't rewrite what's already mine. For a moment he looked stunned, like the ground had just shifted under his feet. Charlotte appeared behind him, curiosity in her eyes. What's going on? I looked at her, my voice steady. Ask your new husband. He'll explain why his house isn't his. Then I turned and walked away. My heels clicked against the stone path. The sound of freedom, of something breaking and something new being born. I didn't look back. Not once. Weeks later, I got a letter in the mail again from Henry. This time no invitation. Just a short note. You were right. I didn't deserve you. I hope someday you forgive me. I placed it in my drawer with the old wedding photo I never threw away. Not because I still loved him, but because I'd finally made peace with that chapter. Sometimes I still make 2 cups of tea in the morning, old habits. One for me, one for the ghost of a love that taught me more about myself than he ever could. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart, drop a heart symbol in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone. You see, life doesn't always give us closure wrapped in kindness. Sometimes it gives us an invitation to a wedding, and a chance to bring the truth. I suppose every story has a beginning, a softer, simpler place before everything fell apart. Before heartbreak had a name. Before silence grew between us like a wall. When I think back to those early days with Henry, I can almost smell the cinnamon rolls burning in our first little kitchen, because I never could remember to set the timer. He used to laugh at me for it, calling me his distracted dreamer. And I loved that sound, That deep, careless laugh that filled every empty corner of our house. We didn't have much back then. Just an old farmhouse outside Willow Creek, a second-hand pickup truck, and dreams that didn't know their limits. I worked mornings at the library, while Henry ran his father's small carpentry business. We were poor, yes, but we were happy. The kind of happy that doesn't need vacations or fancy dinners. Just two people who believed in forever. Some nights, after supper, he'd come sit beside me on the porch. The air would be cool, fireflies blinking over the grass. He'd stretch out his legs and say, "One day, Evelyn, I'm gonna build you a house right here on this land. With your own garden and a swing for Lila." I'd smile and tease him. "And who says I'll still want you by then?" He'd grin, take my hand and whisper, "You will. You'll never get rid of me." If only promises could stay as strong as they sound when the stars are listening. Lila came into our world 2 years later. Tiny, loud, and perfect. Henry cried the first time he held her. Real tears. I'd never seen him cry before. He kissed her little forehead and said, "I'll never let anything hurt her." And I believed him. Our home was full of noise after that. The kind that makes a house feel alive. Baby giggles, lullabies, the clatter of toys across the floor. We'd dance in the kitchen on Saturday mornings, our feet sticking to spilled syrup, our laughter drowning out the radio. I can still remember how Henry would sneak up behind me while I cooked, wrap his arms around my waist, and whisper, "You smell like home." I'd laugh and swat him with a spoon. But deep down I felt safe, like whatever storms came, we'd face them together. If you've ever had a love that made you believe nothing could break it, you'll understand what I felt back then. But somewhere along the way, the laughter started to fade. Not all at once. No, heartbreak rarely shouts. It whispers. It began with small things. Henry started staying late at work. At first it made sense, new clients, expanding business, more responsibility. But soon he stopped calling when he'd be late. I'd sit at the kitchen table with the clock ticking louder every minute, Lila asleep upstairs, and I'd tell myself he was just tired. Just busy. One evening, I tried to surprise him. I packed a basket, his favorite pie, some lemonade, and drove to his workshop after dinner. The road was dark and quiet, the sky heavy with stars. When I pulled up, the lights were off. The door was locked. The next morning, he said he'd been out delivering furniture across town. His voice was calm, steady, but his eyes, they didn't meet mine. I wanted to believe him. I chose to. Because that's what love does. It gives excuses when truth feels too heavy. The distance between us grew inch by inch. He stopped sitting with me on the porch. His laughter came less often. He started bringing home perfume that wasn't mine. Faint traces on his collar, the kind that smelled expensive and floral. I tried to tell myself it was from a customer. I even told myself it didn't matter. But deep down, I felt something crumbling. Lila, only 8 then, noticed too. One night she asked, "Mama, why doesn't Daddy eat dinner with us anymore?" I smiled, held her close and said, "He's working hard for us, sweetheart." She nodded, but her eyes, those big brown eyes, were full of doubt. Sometimes I'd find myself waiting by the window, watching headlights pass, hoping one would stop in our driveway. When he finally came home, I'd try to talk to him, but he'd shrug off my questions with, "Evelyn, not tonight. I'm tired." Then came the nights he didn't come home at all. I stopped sleeping on those nights. I'd make coffee instead, sit by the table, and stare at the empty chair across from me. It's strange how a chair can hold so many memories, laughter, arguments, shared meals, and still look so lonely. Still, I didn't give up. I thought maybe if I reminded him of who we were, things would change. So one evening, I planned something simple. Just dinner, candles, soft music. Lila helped me bake his favorite roast. We even made a banner that said, "Welcome home." When Henry walked in, he froze. "What's all this?" "Just dinner," I said, smiling nervously. "Like old times." He stared at the table, then at me. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to." He sighed. "Evelyn, I told you I've been busy." I stepped closer. "Henry, when was the last time we talked?" "Really talked?" He rubbed his temples. "Evelyn, please. Not tonight." I whispered. "That's what you said last night." He looked at me then, really looked. And in his eyes, I saw a stranger. Someone distant, guarded. I'm just trying to figure things out, he said finally. Figure what out? He didn't answer. He walked past me into the living room and turned on the TV. I stood there with the candles flickering behind me, the smell of roast fading into the walls, and realized something. Love can die even while two people are still standing in the same room. The days that followed were heavy. We barely spoke. I went through the motions, cooking, cleaning, smiling for Lila. But my chest felt tight all the time, like I was holding my breath and waiting for something I couldn't name. One night, I found a letter tucked between Henry's work papers. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting wasn't mine. The words were simple. I miss you too. My hands went cold. My vision blurred. I put it back exactly where I found it, pretending I hadn't seen it. Because once you know the truth, you can't unknow it. That night, I didn't confront him. I just lay beside him in bed, listening to the sound of his breathing. Each breath felt like a lie I was learning to live with. If you've ever held on to someone who was already gone, you know that silence can be louder than any scream. But not everything was sadness back then. There were still flickers, moments that almost felt like before. Like the time he surprised me with a new garden shovel and said, "For your roses." I smiled and kissed his cheek, pretending not to notice how he didn't kiss me back. Or when Lila danced at her school play and he clapped louder than anyone else. For a second, I saw the old Henry in his smile. But those moments became rare. Like stars before dawn, faint and fading. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late summer, the air thick with the smell of rain. I'd just finished washing the dishes when I heard Henry's truck pull into the driveway. Lila was already asleep. I wiped my hands and waited, but he didn't come inside right away. Through the kitchen window, I saw him sitting in the truck, just sitting there, his head in his hands. I opened the door gently. "Henry," I called softly. He startled, then looked up. His eyes were red. "Hey." I stepped closer. "Are you okay?" He nodded too quickly. "Yeah. Long day." But his voice cracked. I wanted to reach out, to touch his arm, to say whatever it is, we'll get through it. But something inside me stopped. Because deep down I already knew, we weren't we anymore. We were just two people pretending not to see the ending. That night, after he went to bed, I sat alone by the window again. The rain started falling, slow, steady, familiar. I thought about how love begins like rain too, soft and beautiful. But if you ignore the storm long enough, it washes everything away. And as the thunder rolled in the distance, I whispered to myself. That night something changed, though I didn't know it yet. I still remember that morning, gray sky, coffee gone cold, the kind of silence that presses on your chest. I woke up before sunrise like I always did. The house was still, the floor creaked under my slippers, and I could hear the faint hum of Henry's truck engine outside. He was leaving early again. Too early. "Henry," I called softly from the doorway, wrapping my sweater around me. "You're heading out already?" He didn't look at me, just kept loading his tools into the back of the truck. "Got a big job today. Don't wait up." My heart sank a little at those words. Don't wait up. It used to be save me a plate. He kissed Lila on the forehead before he left, didn't even glance my way. I stood there by the window watching his taillights fade down the gravel road. That's when it hit me. I didn't even know where he was going anymore. All day, I moved through the motions like a ghost, folding laundry, sweeping the porch, pretending everything was normal. But inside I felt something rising. Not anger, not quite sadness, just dread. That quiet kind that tells you your world's about to crack. That evening, I got a call from the hardware store. "Mrs. Whitman? This is Carl. Just wondering if Henry got the paint order. He didn't pick it up this morning like he said he would." I froze. Oh, maybe he got busy. I'll tell him. But I didn't tell him. Because when he came home that night, hours later than usual, he smelled faintly of wine, not sawdust or paint. I didn't say a word. I just watched him walk past me, hang his coat, and pour himself a drink like nothing was wrong. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But instead, I just whispered, "How was work?" He didn't even answer. For weeks, it went on like that. The distance, the lies. Until one afternoon, A Thursday I remember because Lila had piano lessons. I drove into town to pick her up early. Halfway there, I saw his truck parked outside the Golden Elm Inn. Our truck. I pulled over across the street, my heart thudding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I told myself maybe he was meeting a client, maybe he was just having lunch. But then I saw her, a woman stepping out of the inn's doorway, laughing softly as Henry held it open for her. She had long dark hair, wore a cream-colored coat, and when she turned toward him he reached out and brushed something off her cheek. So gentle. So familiar. I don't remember breathing. I don't remember moving. I just sat there gripping the steering wheel, my hands shaking. When he leaned in to kiss her forehead, I felt something inside me break. I drove home without realizing how. The road blurred, the trees melted into each other. When I pulled into our driveway, I sat there for a long time, staring at the house Henry built. The one he promised would be our forever. That night, when he came home, I tried to pretend I didn't know. But I couldn't stop staring at him. Every lie had a weight now, every smile a cost. He noticed my silence. Evelyn, you okay? I nodded. I've fine. He frowned. You sure? Yes, I said. I'm just tired. He nodded, relieved, and kissed my cheek. I flinched. He didn't notice. If you've ever loved someone so deeply that even their lies sound gentle, you'll understand why I stayed quiet that night. For days I kept replaying what I saw. That woman's laugh. His hand on her face. The way they looked at each other like we used to. I thought maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe it was just confusion. But deep down I knew. The truth doesn't hide. It just waits. Then came the day everything fell apart. I was in the kitchen when the phone rang. Back then, we still had one of those wall phones with the long curly cord. I wiped my hands on a towel and answered. Hello. There was a pause. Then a woman's voice, soft, unsure. Hi, may I speak with Henry? Who's calling? I asked. She hesitated. It's Charlotte. That name burned. I didn't even know how I knew it, but I did. Maybe because it fit, the kind of name that sounds like perfume and secrets. I swallowed hard. Henry's not home right now. Oh, she said quietly. Can you tell him I'll see him at the usual place tomorrow? Noon. My hand went numb. My voice barely came out. Sure. Thank you, she said cheerfully and hung up. I stood there for a long time, holding the receiver, the dial tone buzzing like a scream I couldn't let out. Then I placed it back slowly, sat down and cried. Not loud, not wild, just quiet tears, the kind that leave your throat burning and your heart hollow. When Henry came home that night, I was sitting on the porch waiting. He smiled faintly. Hey, sweetheart. You okay? I looked at him, really looked, and asked, Who's Charlotte? He froze. Just for a second. Then forced a laugh. Charlotte? Who's that? Don't, I whispered. Please, Henry. Not tonight. He sighed. Evelyn, you're imagining things again. Again? My voice cracked. You mean like the nights you worked late? Or the weekends you visited clients? Like those imaginations? He looked away. You're tired. You need rest. Rest. I stood up. I need truth, Henry. He didn't say a word. Just walked inside, poured himself another drink, and turned on the TV. The same way he always did when he didn't want to face me. I followed him, tears stinging my eyes. Say something. Anything. He turned the volume up. So I did the only thing left to do. I turned it off. The screen went black. Silence filled the room. That's when he finally looked at me. And what I saw in his eyes wasn't guilt. It was exhaustion. Evelyn, he said quietly, I can't do this anymore. My knees went weak. Do what? This. Us. The pretending. Pretending. I whispered. Pretending we're still a family? He nodded slowly. It's over, Evelyn. It's been over for a long time. I couldn't breathe. I felt the room spinning, his words echoing like a cruel wind. Lila's laughter from the past, our wedding vows, the porch swings, the promises, all crashing into silence. He packed his bag that night. No shouting, no drama. Just the sound of a zipper, a door creaking, and a heart breaking quietly in the corner. I watched him leave with tears I didn't even feel falling. When the headlights disappeared, I sank to the floor and held myself. That's the thing about heartbreak. It doesn't kill you right away. It just leaves you half alive. For weeks, I tried to hold myself together for Lila. She asked where Daddy was. I told her he was away for work. But she wasn't a fool. She saw the truth in my eyes. I stopped eating. I stopped smiling. Until one morning, I went to the post office to collect the mail and saw a letter, addressed to Henry, but with no return name. The handwriting was elegant, soft, the same as before. I opened it. Inside there was a note, short but sharp as a knife. Can't wait to start our life together. Love you, C. My hands shook so hard the paper nearly tore. I didn't cry this time. I just sat there in my car, staring out at the sky. The truth was so simple now, so cruelly clear. He hadn't just left me. He'd been planning it. Stay with me till the end. What I found next still keeps me awake at night. A few days later, I went into town for groceries. I didn't plan to go near the Golden Elm Inn again, but fate has its own way. As I walked past, I saw the window open, and through it Henry, sitting at a table, holding Charlotte's hand, laughing. But this time there was something different. On the table between them, a small black box. My stomach dropped. He opened it, and inside was a ring. He was proposing. My fingers went numb around the grocery bag. I stood there on the sidewalk, frozen, watching the man who once promised me forever promise it to someone else. And then, Charlotte leaned forward, whispering something to him. He smiled and kissed her. The world blurred. I turned and walked away, one step at a time, the sound of my heartbeat echoing in my ears. That night, I sat by the window again. Lila was asleep upstairs. I looked at the stars, the same ones we used to wish under, and whispered, why wasn't I enough? But there was no answer, just the soft hum of the wind outside, and the emptiness of a woman learning to live without the love she built her life around. If you've ever watched someone walk away with your heart still beating in their hands, you'll understand what I felt that night. And though I didn't know it then, the story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because one day years later, he'd come back into my life. Not with flowers or apologies, but with an invitation to his wedding. And that, my dear, was when I decided to bring the truth. I didn't cry after that night. I didn't scream. I just went quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after years of giving everything to someone who only took. My hands didn't tremble anymore, they steadied. My voice didn't shake when I spoke his name. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was something stronger. A woman finally ready to rise. The morning after I discovered his betrayal, I sat on my porch with a cup of cold coffee. The sky looked bruised, heavy with clouds. A soft wind brushed against my face, carrying the scent of the rain that hadn't fallen yet. And as I watched the world outside, something inside me began to shift. It wasn't revenge that filled me, it was clarity. For years, I had lived under his shadow, believing my silence was love. But silence is not love, it's surrender. And I had surrendered for far too long. That day, I opened the small wooden box I kept hidden in the bottom drawer of my dresser. Inside were old letters, photos, and, most importantly, documents. Our shared house deed, insurance papers, and the will he once made before life turned cruel. I ran my fingers across the pages, tracing the ink like it could whisper back the years I'd lost. He thought I was fragile. He thought the woman who once cooked his breakfast and ironed his shirts would fade quietly. But I wasn't fading. I was remembering who I was before him. I took those papers, put them neatly in a folder, and walked to the attorney's office downtown. The same office we'd sat in years ago when he swore we'd build everything together. Mr. Kavanaugh, the attorney, looked surprised to see me. Lydia, it's been a while. What brings you in? I smiled softly, but my eyes didn't. I need to make a few corrections, Mr. Kavanaugh. It seems my husband's memory has been selective lately. He nodded, leaning forward. Selective memory, or deception? I tilted my head. Both. We went through every paper, every line that had my name missing or crossed out. My husband, Mark, had been transferring things quietly. The car, the stocks, the property, all shifting toward his new love, Susan. But what he didn't realize was that I still held one key piece: the house itself. It was in both our names, and without my signature, nothing could be finalized. For the first time in months, I smiled, not out of joy but relief. Don't blink now, what happened next changed everything. The day of his wedding came faster than I thought. He'd invited me. Out of guilt or arrogance, I couldn't tell. The invitation arrived in an ivory envelope, neat and smug. I stared at it for hours before deciding I would go. Not as a broken ex-wife, but as the woman who had once built his world, and who now held the truth he couldn't escape. The church smelled of lilies and perfume. Guests whispered behind lace fans and polished shoes. I walked in wearing a soft gray dress, not flashy, not mournful, just calm. My hands clutched my small handbag, where the documents sat folded perfectly. Mark turned when he saw me. His face stiffened, guilt flickered for a second, then pride covered it. "Lydia," he said, forcing a polite smile. "I didn't think you'd come." "I wasn't sure I would," I replied, my voice even. "But I thought it'd be rude not to witness your new beginning." Susan appeared beside him, radiant and unaware. I almost pitied her. Almost. The ceremony began. Words about love and loyalty filling the air. The very words that had once bound me to him. And when the pastor asked if anyone had an objection, my heart didn't race. It simply whispered, "Now." I stepped forward, slowly. The sound of my heels echoed down the aisle. Every head turned. Mark's smile faltered. "I'm sorry," I said softly, "but I can't let this continue." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Susan blinked in confusion. "Who is this woman?" she asked. Mark swallowed hard. "She's my ex-wife." "Lydia, please, this isn't the time." "Oh, I think it is," I replied. I pulled out the folded papers from my bag and placed them on the table beside the altar. "You forgot to mention that you're still legally married, Mark." A silence so deep it could break glass filled the room. The pastor's hand froze midair. "What?" Susan whispered, stepping back. Mark's face drained of color. "That's not true." I interrupted him, calm as ever. "The divorce papers you filed weren't finalized. You needed my signature, remember? You never got it. So before you start another life, maybe end the one you already ruined." He reached for the papers, but I moved first. "And before you tear them up, you might want to check page 3, I said. "The deed to the house. The one you've been trying to sell." The crowd shifted, murmuring. Mark's lawyer, sitting somewhere in the back, stood up, eyes wide. He knew. He had known all along. Susan's hand trembled as she looked at him. "You told me everything was done. You said she was out of your life." Mark stammered, voice cracking. This isn't what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. I turned to Susan, my tone gentle but firm. "You seem kind. Be careful what kind of man you promise you're forever to. Some only understand love when it's gone." She looked at me, eyes wet. Then she dropped the bouquet and walked out. Mark called her name, but the church doors slammed shut, leaving his voice echoing in the silence. I looked at him one last time. "You took everything from me once. My peace, my dignity. Today, I'm taking only what's mine, the truth." I picked up my papers and left. The sound of my footsteps on the marble floor was the only thing breaking the quiet. It felt like walking out of a cage. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain again. Only this time, it smelled like freedom. I walked down the church steps, past the guests who didn't know where to look. Some whispered my name, others stared, but none of it mattered. For the first time, I didn't care what anyone thought. That evening, I sat by my window as the rain finally began to fall. The sound was soft, comforting. I poured myself a cup of tea and watched the drops slide down the glass. My reflection stared back at me, older, wiser, whole. Some people believe revenge is loud, fiery, and cruel. But mine was quiet. It was truth, spoken at the right time, to the right person. And it was enough. Because justice doesn't always need a courtroom. Sometimes it's just one woman standing in the place where she once broke, and refusing to break again. And that, I realized, was my true freedom. It's been 2 years since that day in the church. 2 long, quiet years filled with mornings that don't hurt anymore, and nights that finally bring peace. Sometimes I still wake before dawn, the way I used to when I'd cook breakfast for Mark. I'll set out 2 cups, one for me, one for him, then I catch myself and smile softly. Old habits, I whisper. Then I put 1 cup back. The first few months after everything ended were the hardest. Not because I missed him, but because I missed who I used to be before him. The woman who laughed easily, who hummed while baking pies, who believed kindness was always enough. I had to meet her again. And let me tell you, she took her time coming home. I moved into a smaller house on the edge of town. A little white cottage with blue shutters and a garden that catches the morning light. It's quiet here. The kind of quiet that doesn't ache. The kind that lets you hear your own heart again. There's an old rocking chair by the porch, one I fixed up myself. The paint is chipped, but when I sit there with my tea, I feel whole. Every creak of that chair sounds like forgiveness. At first, I thought about revenge, I won't lie. There were nights I imagined Mark realizing what he lost, crying into his perfect new life that never really happened. But as time passed, something changed. I didn't want him to hurt anymore. I just wanted me to stop hurting. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about setting yourself free from the memory of their shadow. And that's what I learned, one sunrise at a time. There's a small diner down the road where I go every Friday morning. The waitress there, Clara, always brings me my coffee before I even ask. Black, no sugar, same as always, she says with a wink. Sometimes we talk about her grandkids, sometimes we just sit in silence. And that silence, it's comfortable. One morning, I saw him again. Mark. I was sitting by the window, reading a book, when he walked in. His hair had gone grayer, his posture smaller. He didn't see me at first. But when he did, oh, his eyes said everything words couldn't. He walked over, cautious, like he was approaching a ghost. Lydia, he said softly. I looked up, calm as the sky outside. Mark. He hesitated. You look well. I am, I said simply. We sat there for a moment, just breathing the same air after all those years of silence. He fiddled with his wedding ring, only there wasn't one. I noticed. He must have seen that I noticed. She left, he said after a while. His voice cracked, barely above a whisper. Susan left. I nodded. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. He laughed bitterly. You were always the better one, Lydia. I just didn't see it then. I smiled, not out of pride, but peace. Sometimes we don't see what we already have until it's gone, I said. He nodded, eyes wet. Then he left. Just like that. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger or sorrow. I felt light. I watched him walk out that diner door and realized something important. Closure doesn't always come wrapped in apologies or explanations. Sometimes it's just a quiet moment where your heart doesn't ache anymore. Later that day, I came home, baked an apple pie, and left the windows open. The scent filled the whole house, warm and sweet, just like it used to when life was simpler. As I took that first bite, I remembered something my grandmother once told me when I was a little girl. Don't let pain make you bitter, Lydia. Let it make you wise. And she was right. The truth is, I don't regret loving him. Love isn't the mistake, blindness is. But every mistake teaches you where to look next time. And I've learned to look inward first. Sometimes I take long walks down by the river. The water reflects the sun in little shards of gold. And I toss pebbles in, watching the ripples fade. That's how life feels now. Calm waves after the storm. There are evenings when the house smells of lavender and rain. And I sit by the window with a blanket over my knees. The street outside is quiet, except for the sound of crickets and the occasional passing car. That sound, steady, distant, alive, reminds me that time keeps moving. And so do we. Every scar I carry now feels like a story that made me stronger. Every heartbreak, a lesson in disguise. You know, there's something beautiful about rebuilding yourself when no one's watching. About finding joy in the smallest things. A fresh loaf of bread, the smell of rain, the feel of sunlight on your hands. Sometimes I still whisper a little prayer before bed. Not for him, not for the past, but for myself. That I never forget how far I've come. That I never settle for less than peace again. And you know what? Peace looks good on me. It doesn't mean I'm unscarred. It means I survived. I've met other women at church who've gone through the same thing. We sit in the back pew, sharing quiet smiles and knowing looks. We don't need to say much. Our hearts already understand each other. If you've ever rebuilt yourself after being broken, if you've ever stood up quietly while the world expected you to fall, then you know what I mean. Love doesn't always win the way we expect it to. Sometimes the victory is simply walking away with your soul intact. And that's enough. I keep one framed photo of us, me and Mark, in our younger days on a shelf. Not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder of who I used to be and who I've become. The woman in that photo didn't know how strong she was. The one standing here today does. There's peace in my heart now. The kind that doesn't need anyone's permission to exist. If I've learned anything from my journey, it's this. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It's about remembering without pain. The rain has started again outside. It always seems to come when I'm thinking deeply, like an old friend who knows when to visit. I open the window and let the scent of wet earth fill the room. It smells like healing. And as the drops tap softly against the glass, I close my eyes and whisper, I'm finally home. If you've ever felt her pain, tell me what city you're listening from. I love reading your stories. And if this touched your heart, subscribe and stay with me for more true feeling life journeys. Because sometimes the greatest love story isn't about who you lose. It's about who you find within yourself.